Hello and welcome to Hollywood at Home from Arizona Public Media. I'm Victoria Lucas. Tonight's movie is the 1976 political thriller, All the President's Men, based on the true story of two little-known Washington Post reporters who took on the President of the United States following the infamous 1972 Watergate break-in and burglary. Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman star as Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, who began reporting on the scandal in the summer of 1972. For 2 years, despite multiple dead ends and resistance from many quarters, they refused to give up as bit by bit, they uncovered widespread criminal behavior, triggering congressional investigations that would indict multiple White House conspirators and ultimately lead to the resignation of President Richard M. Nixon. But Robert Redford was more than just the star of the movie. He was the driving force behind the project. Woodward and Bernstein had written a first-hand account of their investigation, and Redford felt the book would make a terrific film because it was as much a character study as a political thriller. As he explained, the two guys couldn't be more different. Different religions, different politics, different everything. They didn't even like each other very much. I wanted to emphasize their contrasting personalities, showing how the differences between them produced the chemistry that led to their success. Plus, I wanted to focus on something I thought not many people think about. How do journalists get the story? Redford purchased movie rights to the book before it was even published. At first, imagining the project as a small black and white art house film. But when he pitched the idea to Warner Brothers, the studio told him, either you star as Bob Woodward or the cameras won't roll. It took a while for Redford to change gears, but finally he agreed. He then asked novelist and screenwriter William Goldman, who had written 3 films for him, including his star-making Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, to adapt the book for the screen. Goldman and Redford both were adamant that the movie must be as accurate as possible. Nothing was allowed into the script unless it had been meticulously verified and confirmed by independent sources. Goldman spent many hours with the two reporters, probing their personalities, their experiences and motivations, trying to determine how best to transform them into movie characters. Woodward was a bit bemused at being played on screen by a major star, saying, "I'm essentially boring, you know. The way I live and work is undramatic. Not the kind of character you ordinarily see in the movies." But as Goldman later said, "We knew if we tried to go Hollywood and glamorize the characters or the story, we'd be in terrible trouble. We had to keep it as honest as possible and let the real-life drama speak for itself." Next, Redford needed to find the right director. Alan Pakula had always been intrigued with the twin themes of power and fear, which he had explored before in his films The Parallax View and Klute. He saw All the President's Men as a thriller, pitting two relatively inexperienced and therefore vulnerable reporters in a race to uncover and prove their facts against some of the most powerful people in the world. Pakula's concept worked for Redford, so he was brought on board. The director immediately began working with cinematographer Gordon Willis to come up with a unique visual tone for the movie, dramatically juxtaposing the reporter's dark, shadowy world of secrets against the brightly lit newsroom where those secrets would be exposed. Next came casting. Dustin Hoffman bore an uncanny resemblance to Carl Bernstein and, by coincidence, had also tried to grab the film rights to the book, so he happily came aboard. Pakula then filled out the supporting cast with strong character actors, including Jason Robards in an Oscar-winning performance as editor Ben Bradley, Jane Alexander, Martin Balsam, Jack Warden, and, as the mysterious source Deep Throat, a perfectly cast Hal Holbrook. With the approval of the Washington Post, both Redford and Hoffman spent several weeks in the newsroom with the real-life men they would be playing, observing the reporters and attending staff meetings. By contrast, Jason Robards only spent one day in the newsroom watching Ben Bradley, but according to Bradley's wife, he got Ben perfectly. A good portion of the movie takes place in the vast newsroom of the Washington Post, and the filmmakers hoped to be able to shoot at least a few scenes in the real location. Logistically, however, that proved to be impossible, as the newsroom was a 24/7 operation that simply could not be disrupted by dozens of film crew wanting to move people and furniture in order to place their cameras and hot movie lights, not to mention maintaining silence while dialogue was being recorded. So it was decided to construct an exact replica of the newsroom on a large soundstage at Warner Brothers Studio in Hollywood, and to populate it with actors and extras whose work would not be disrupted by the filmmakers, because this would be their work. The only problem was that, aside from expense, the real Washington Post newsroom covers more than an acre of floor space, bigger than any studio soundstage. So to make the set look bigger than it actually was, production designer George Jenkins employed false perspective, a technique in which increasingly smaller desks and filing cabinets and shorter people were placed farther from the camera to make them seem further away. It's an old Hollywood trick, but you probably won't notice. You'll be too busy watching Redford and Hoffman. Production began on May 12, 1974, with exterior scenes and some interiors in Washington, D.C., followed by the company returning to Los Angeles for newsroom interiors. All the President's Men has since been credited with changing the very nature of journalism, as investigative reporting has become increasingly popular. In fact, the term "follow the money," first used in tonight's movie, has become such newsroom shorthand that most young reporters have no idea that it came from a movie rather than the other way around. And the movie is still used by journalism professors to illustrate both the daily grind of reporting and the ultimate adrenaline rush of breaking a big story. The movie premiered at the Kennedy Center in New York in April 1976 and was an instant hit, both with critics and at the box office, where it earned more than $70 million. It was nominated for 8 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actress for Jane Alexander, and Best Editing. It won 4. Supporting Actor for Jason Robards, Adapted Screenplay for William Goldman, plus Best Art Direction and Sound. So now please sit back, put on your thinking cap, and enjoy the movie that Robert Redford calls a howdunit about a whodunit. From 1976, it's All the President's Men.